not take the class for a long duration. It will be not going on for much long time, maybe half an hour or max of 40 minutes. Okay. So I hope yesterday's video yesterday you all have watched, and then not yesterday's video, yesterday you all were there live. Okay, so that you know yesterday what we discussed, because today will just be a continuation of what we have done yesterday. Okay, so I assume that you all know, you were there yesterday. Oops.
Yes.
Perfect. So let's talk about first of all memory management. Okay, so we first of all saw yesterday, just a quick revision. We saw what are classes. Okay, and classes will always contain only two things. What are those?
Variable and functions and variables.
Functions and variables. From now onwards, don't use this word variables. Call it as attributes. Okay, but for your understanding, I told you that variables. Why? Because I think you know variables, right? So it will sound similar. So it is variables itself, but the name is given different in OOPS concept. So call it as attributes and not variables. And don't call functions, call it as methods in OOPS. Only these two things will be there. And we know what is an object. Object is actually a real world entity, and now you don't know only theoretically what is real world entity, but you also know what is the meaning of real world entity. When I say real world entity, what does it exactly mean, that you know. And you also know why OOPS. Why do we actually need OOPS? Why we are studying OOPS? Okay, so that also thing you know. And then you know what is OOPS. It can be implemented using several different languages also. It's not like it has to be implemented only using Python. Okay, so these all things are clear, right? So if these all things are clear, right, now we'll talk about how memory is getting distributed, or memory management we'll talk. Memory management. Okay, so when I say memory management, right, what do I mean? Memory basically means where are these actual objects getting stored. Yesterday we created objects, yesterday we created class. Class is basically a blueprint. We wrote all those functions, attributes and methods inside that class. We created real world objects also, right? We created what is the syntax to create an object, we saw. And if you want to access any of the properties of the class, right, or any of the methods of the class, you know that only object has the right to access the methods and the properties of a class. So if you want to access it, you will have to first of all create an object, and once you create an object, then you will be using a dot operator to access any method or any property or any attribute of that particular class to which that object belongs to. I think if you have seen yesterday's, what I said right now makes complete sense to you. It's very simple. So what I am trying to understand, now we are trying to understand, is where are these objects getting stored. So if you talk, these objects will get stored in your hard drive itself, hard disk, whatever you have of your computer, right? Computer, whatever RAM and all is there, right? Inside that RAM itself, it will be getting stored. But there is a special memory that is allocated for these objects. So these objects will be actually stored. Yesterday I talked about this little bit. So can someone tell me yesterday, if you remember? Objects will actually be stored in your memory itself. Memory means where? Your RAM itself. But exactly in which type of memory? There is a special memory that stores objects. What is that memory? Can anyone recollect? Whichever objects you are creating, there is a special memory to basically store these objects, and that memory is basically called as heap memory. Yesterday I told this word, heap memory. Okay, this is a special memory, or you can say that this is a special place. Memory means, you know, right? Memory means a computer place where all your videos, pictures and all this are stored, right? So it's stored in memory, or it's stored in your disk, right? So something similar to that. And there is one more memory which is called as stack memory. Stack memory. Okay, and in stack memory, what will be stored then? In heap memory, what will be stored? In heap memory, objects will be stored. Inside this heap memory, objects are stored. Which objects? The actual object is getting stored. Actual object basically means that the real object which you have created, that object gets stored. But very interesting, there is one more memory which is called a stack memory, and inside that stack memory, reference to that object is stored. Reference to the object gets stored. Okay, what do you mean by reference to the object gets stored? It basically means that the variable in which the object is stored, that is called as reference. Okay, so variable, I'll show you what do I mean by this exactly. Okay, so simple 2 points I am telling you, very important points, but one is there is a special memory which is called as heap memory. What is the use of this heap memory? All the objects which you are going to create, all those objects are basically getting stored in which memory? They are getting stored in heap memory. Then there is one more special type of memory which is called as stack memory. What is the use of this stack memory? Reference variables of the a reference variable which is pointing towards the object is basically stored in stack memory. I'll write it here once again. Reference variable which is pointing towards object, which is pointing towards the actual object which is actually stored in heap memory. So pointing towards the actual object. Okay, so the reference variable which is pointing towards the actual object. Where is that actual object stored? In the heap memory. So wherever that actual object is stored, right, that object, reference variable which is pointing towards that particular object, right, actual object, is stored in stack memory. I'll give you a simple example that will make complete clear. Is stored in stack memory. Okay, so what do I mean by all this kind of stuff? Let's say we have a class human. Let's say we have a class human being. Okay, and this has lots of properties, like lots of things are there. There can be only two things inside this. One is methods and attributes, nothing else. Okay, attributes are basically static properties that are available inside the class, which are non-moving or which are not dynamic, and the methods are basically the dynamic properties that are available inside this class. Dynamic means it can walk, it can talk, all this kind of stuff. Static means it has 2 eyes, that is a number, static number. Maybe it has 2 legs, so that kind of things. Only these things will be there. So if we want to create a object of this human being class, so can I say that how do I create? Can someone tell me how do I create an object of a human being class? Let's say I want to create Gautam. Someone has created a blueprint of human beings, and now I want to create a Gautam in front of you. Or let's think that God has created a blueprint, and now God wants to create a real Gautam. What he created before is a blueprint of human beings, that this is how human beings are going to look. This is how human beings are going to have all the features. These all things he wrote in a pen and paper. That is a blueprint. But now he has to give that paper to a manufacturing company, right? And the manufacturing company will have all the instruments, have all the machines, and it will create the real human being. So you can just imagine it's like a machine. This is a manufacturing machine. Manufacturing machine. What it does? You give blueprint to it as an input. Just imagine like this, a blueprint is going as an input inside this machine, and boom, a human being is coming outside from this. A real human being is coming outside from this. So this blueprint was actually of human being. So human being came out. If this blueprint was a car, then car would have come out. A real car would have come out from this. A real car would have come out from this. So it's a manufacturing machine, okay? And this this is actually called as class. And these whatever are real entities which are coming out, right, which are real human beings, which can talk, which can speak and all, a car which you can touch and all, a real car, these are called as objects. I told you these objects are basically stored in heap memory. Now what I am trying to tell you is, this is actually an object. This human being what has got produced, right, this is actually an object, but don't you feel that how you actually create an object? Something like this, right? You write the class name, human being, something like this, and then you store that in particular variable. Let's call it as Gautam because I am creating an object Gautam. Let's call it as Gautam. So this actually what is there, right? This is the object which we have created, which belongs to this particular class, human being class, which we have created. Will you agree? Clear? Is it clear?
Yes.
Perfect. Now what I am trying to tell you is this Gautam what we have created, right? Now tell me one thing. This Gautam is a name that is given to the real Gautam, or it is the actual Gautam. There are two different things. Okay. So imagine there is a human being. Okay. And this human being is given a name Gautam. Which is the real object inside these two? I, which is the real object? I, who is sitting and teaching you, okay, who is somewhere near railway station, that is real object, or the word Gautam is real object?
You
Who is teaching?
Completely correct. I am the real object. Now what is Gautam then? What is Gautam?
object name.
Object name, very important. Okay, so you should understand this crystal and clearly. Object name is different and real object is different. Real object is you, but your name, what is given to you, right? That is object name. So what happens? What is the use of this then? Why I told all this kind of thing is because this object name gets stored in stack memory. Stack memory. It gets stored in stack memory, and this real object which is there, right? This gets stored in heap memory. Okay. What is the use of this object name? It is actually a reference which is pointing towards the real object. You understand this line? It is a reference variable. It is just a reference which is pointing towards the real object. How can you say like this? See, something like this. Whenever someone calls Gautam, right? Anywhere someone calls Gautam, I'll look at them, right? Why I look at them? Because Gautam is just a variable or a reference variable which is pointing towards the real Gautam. How can you say it is pointing towards real Gautam? Because whenever someone calls Gautam, I will see, right? So whenever I am associated, the real Gautam what is there, right, who is sitting here, is associated with this name, right, which is given to it, that is Gautam. So whenever someone calls Gautam, I will basically see. So that is why I am saying you that the Gautam name is actually a reference variable which is pointing or which is saying there that object is, which is pointing towards object, which is pointing where the object is, and or who is that object, something like this. It will tell, this reference variable will tell where that object is or who is that object. Real object is different, but this reference variable what I am talking, right, this is completely different, and this reference variable is stored in basically stack memory. This is what you have to understand. Memory, how in which memory what gets stored here. That is one thing very important to understand. You have to understand in classes. Now something interesting I'll tell you. Okay, something very beautiful. When we write a equals to 5 in Python, okay, something beautiful is happening here. You know what? When you write a is equals to 5, you don't write first of all data type. You know why we don't write data type? Because Python is a dynamic programming language. Why in dynamic programming languages we don't write data type? Because dynamic programming languages ke andar, whenever you create a variable like this, right, what happens is you are actually not only creating a variable, you are creating a new object of some class. Which class? Whatever value you have given here, that class. I mean, if you have given an integer value, it will create an object A of the integer class. If you are giving maybe value as 5.0, it will create an object of a float class. Why? How can you prove this to me? I'll show you. Now sometimes some things you might be feeling little bit strange. if I write a equals to 5, what are you saying? How an object is getting created? But the syntax for creating objects looks little bit different. Okay, I'll make you understand that. Okay, so just see, if I write a equals to 5, something like this, let's print type of a. What is the type of a? Print type of a. Perfect, looks good, nothing much difficulty in this program, we have done it so many times. Let's execute this and see, and you should get integer, right? Because type of a is integer, you should get integer, answer is integer. You will not get integer. Okay, just see what you will get. You will get class int. Class int, when you are getting right, there is something very beautiful happening here. That means that it is basically an object which is belonging to a class int. So what is this a now? A is not a normal variable in Python. In dynamic programming languages, when you don't write data type, right, it's not a normal variable. It's not a normal variable. You have actually behind the scene, okay, or maybe you must have not consciously done it, but unconsciously you have actually created, you wrote simple way a is equals to 5 itself, but actually an object got created here. An object is getting created of class int. What is the proof? Just do type of a. You should get integer if it was only integer, but you are getting class int. Class int basically means somewhere classes are involved here, man. Classes are involved, matlab objects also will be involved, because without objects classes doesn't have anything role itself. You actually created an object here with the help of a class. That where is that class defined then? You might be asking, where is that class? What is the blueprint of that class? Can you show me that? Yes, I can show you that, but that class is inbuilt defined. It's like inbuilt functions. Your definition of the function is inbuilt, right? It has been defined by someone else, right? And you just call the function, right? Exactly same way here also. You created an object, but the blueprint of that object is already written by someone else. See here itself it is saying class type int. It is a class. It belongs to a class of type integer. Something very beautiful happened here. So just remember one very important point. In Python, everything is an object. In Python, everything, I mean, when I say everything, even creating a variable is actually an object. That sounds really amazing. Actually, an object. It is an object. You are creating an object. There is a class which is written by someone else, maybe like a built-in functions written by someone else, but you are actually calling that function exactly same way you are creating an object, but class is basically written by someone else. In Python, you should understand this very beautiful point. Okay, this is a really very interesting point which you should understand. Okay, lot of people create variables, but they don't know in Python. Okay, I'm not talking, not in every programming language. Okay, in Python, but they don't know this thing what I'm telling you right now, that if you create a variable also, you actually are creating an object. Okay, so what if I write a equals to 5 here? If I write a equals to 5, can someone tell me which is actually the real object and which is the reference variable to this? Which is the actual object? That means which is Gautam in this and which is reference variable to this?
Reference is A, actual is 5.
Perfect.
5.
This is A is just a reference variable. That's it. Nothing is there in A. A is just pointing towards 5. But which is the real object? Real object is this particular guy. This is the actual object belonging to which class? Belonging to which class?
Integer.
Int.
Belonging to int class. How do you understand it is an integer class? Seeing this number, it will understand whether this is an object of integer class or some other class. But this is just a reference variable which is pointing towards A. So whenever you say A, print A, it will print Y. It will print 5. Why it will print 5? Because it is a reference variable which is pointing towards A, the real object, and the real object is 5. So obviously it is going to print 5 because it's just like saying whenever someone calls Gautam, the real Gautam will come. Whenever someone calls Gautam, the real Gautam will be basically called, right? Something like that. Whenever someone uses this word Gautam, real Gautam is going to appear. So very simple. Name Gautam is just a reference variable, but the real Gautam is the real object. Okay. So can someone tell me where this A is stored? Where this A is stored? Where this phi is stored? First.
Heap.
A is stored in stack memory and pi stored in heap memory.
In
Perfect.
memory.
This is stored in stack memory. This is stored in heap memory. As simple as that. But this is a really depth concept which you are getting right now, that whenever you write, someone writes A is equals to 5, right? So anyone might be writing A is equals to 5 and might be saying you, hey, we created a variable and we are storing 5 value inside it. But in Python it's not like that. You actually created an object, man. You might be not knowing, but you are using some oops concept there. And you might be not knowing, but really there is some advanced concept which you are using there, even while creating a variable in Python. What you have to understand. So I hope you got little bit more broader perspective of this part. When you were everything, most of the things in Python is basically an object. You create an object of some of the classes which are already existing inside behind the scene. Okay. Whenever you write A, what is reference variable, what is the real object? I hope that concept is completely clear. Where these objects are stored and all this kind of stuff is completely clear for you. Okay. So can do one thing. Not sure, but I think we can somehow go to class. See here, type is not a function, type is also a class. So we can somehow go to this guy, int. Come on, I'm not able to go here. But there is an integer class, okay, which has been defined in Python. Python's where those all inbuilt functions are basically defined, right? So whenever you download Python, all that things comes up along with that. Okay, so there is an inbuilt class that is defined, which is of class integer. Perfect. That looks super cool. So let me do one thing. Let's create a human being class. Class human being. This should be very simple syntax now and very common. And let's create some properties. Maybe eyes, eye color. Eye color is equals to maybe brown, hair color maybe black, maybe we want to create something like number of legs don't, number of eyes because of the fixed. Let's not create that. Let's say def speak, one function where this human beings can speak. And I told you, right, whenever you are using functions in oops, inside a class, if you are creating a function, you should always pass the first parameter as self. What is this? We'll be diving just within few minutes, okay? But always this parameter is fixed whenever you are creating functions in classes. Don't write this self keyword in normal functions, okay? Whenever you create a class, and inside that class, if you are creating a functions, the first parameter to that function is fixed, which is self. What is the use of this? Why we are writing this? We'll understand it, okay? But don't write the self keyword in normal functions. In only classes I am talking. Okay, so maybe print I'm speaking. This as some more things like maybe eat. So def eat, and what happens, you know, whenever you are writing only one parameter, right, inside the function, that time you should always put a comma. Okay, only when one parameter is there, that time you should always put a comma. Okay, anytime, because if you do like this, right, now it will think that these are normal brackets. Okay, so it will not consider, it will think like these are normal brackets. So whenever you have only one parameter, if you have two parameters, something like this, then it's a different case. You should not put a comma here. But only if you have one parameter, right, inside this one, if you are accepting only one parameter, right, then you can put this line. Okay, this comma. So let's say print I'm eating. Perfect, looks good. So let's create an object. Let's create a Gautam who can speak, who can eat, who has brown eyes and who has black hairs. Okay, how do you create it? You know it. Human being. Perfect, looks good. And as soon as I do this, let's store it in some variable Gautam. So this is the syntax of the actual object. Okay, so when you write this, right, this is where actual object is getting created. So whatever object is getting created, right, that is actually stored in this variable Gautam. So this is just a reference variable Gautam. But where is the actual object? This one, whatever it creates and give me, right, this one is the actual object. This line, whatever it will create and give me, is the actual object, and that actual object is, we are giving a name to that actual object, that is Gautam. This is just a reference variable that is pointing towards Gautam. Okay, so yesterday also we saw it. Now something beautiful I'll tell you. Let's do one thing. Let's print and see what is this self. Print self. Okay. Print self. Okay, perfect. Now I want you all to do one thing. I want me to call this function, speak function. How to call speak function? How to call speak function fast?
Gautam.speak.
Gautam.speak. This is how we call a function. Let's run. Something is getting printed here. First of all, I told print self, and something got printed here. See here. And after that, I wrote I am speaking. Okay, that looks good. So this got printed. Now, can someone tell me what is this self? See here, seeing here. Can someone tell me what is the self? See here, you will understand. Because yesterday also we have printed this Gautam and saw, and we got something similar. If you noticed yesterday. Can you tell what is self? Can you tell or no? Let's make it very simple. Still more simple. Let's print and see Gautam. Let's print and see Gautam. Now let's see what will happen. Now see what is happening. Now can someone tell me? What is this? What is self-holding? You all are there? I think it is very simple. Seeing itself you will understand.
Attribute.
Main object.
Exactly. Not attribute. Why attribute? Because attribute is just a variable name. What is this actually? This is getting printed. What I have printed? Print Gautam I have told. Gautam is actually a reference variable which is pointing towards the object, right? And the reference variable is actually here, this line. What it is saying? This line is saying that, hey, I am actually an object which is pointing towards object which is basically belonging to this human being class, or I can say that I am actually a reference variable which is pointing towards an object which is belonging to human being class, and that object is stored at this particular address in the memory. You are getting my point? Hey, I told you to print Gautam. So what it is saying? Hey, I am actually a reference variable. See here in the main. What is this main? I'll discuss. It is saying that human being object. It is this Gautam is actually a human being object which is located at this particular address. So this Gautam is not actually the object. I told you, right? This is the place where you create an object, right? Gautam is just a name that is given to an object. Gautam is name that is given to an object. Where is the actual object stored then? The actual object is basically stored in the heap memory at this particular address. It is saying this is just a reference variable, but it is telling here, no, that it is belonging to a human being object. It is an object which is belonging to a human being class. It is saying, right? So now can someone tell me what is this self-holding? If you see self, if I print, it is printing the same thing. What is self-holding? What is self-holding? First, what is self? Come on, you told. Seeing itself, you should understand. Come on, fast. We don't have time today. I told you, right? It will be going to be only 40 minutes. You are not understanding by seeing this? Seriously? If I print Gautam, it is printing this line. And what is Gautam? Forget about self. What is Gautam? Tell me. What is Gautam?
Object name.
Object name.
Object name. And the object is actual object, the actual human being object. Where it is stored?
In heap memory.
In heap memory. Then if I am printing self, it is printing same thing as Gautam. Then what is basically self holding? My question. Very simple.
Memory address.
Memory address.
Memory
yes.
address.
In other sense, I can say that. Can I say something like this? Self keyword is actually nothing but a reference which is pointing, a reference variable which is pointing towards main object. Can I say something like this? Can I say or no? Simple words. You agree with me or no? Just say me. If no, then we'll discuss. Is it correct or wrong? You guys are there, no?
Yes.
Huh. I hope there is no problems with that, because Gautam is actually a reference variable which is pointing towards the real object of human being whichever we have created. If self also is printing the same thing, then self also is basically a variable which is actually pointing towards the real object. It is just pointing to, just a variable which is pointing towards the real object. That is what you have to understand. I hope this made the self concept clear after printing whatever I have printed, right? That has made, if someone asks you what is self, self is actually a keyword which is used in this object oriented programming, which we passed as a parameter to every function that is there inside a class. Every function by default it will take a parameter self. What is the self holding then? It is actually a reference variable which is pointing towards the object, the real object, whatever real object is there, right? The self is actually holding that particular object itself. It is pointing, pointing towards that particular object. As simple as that. Very simple, because how we know, right, reference variables are basically stored like this and real objects are basically like this. So self is actually a reference variable that is pointing towards the real object. As simple as that. Okay, nothing much to scratch your head there. Okay, so after that, understanding self, we will study something very interesting. Okay, something which is an exception, something which breaks little bit maybe some rules, and that guy is called as constructor. Constructor in Python. Who is this guy, constructor? Hey, this guy is amazing guy, because this is nothing but, it's a method. Method means what? It's a function. What is special about this particular function? Yes, there is some speciality of this function. So I will call it as it's a special function. You know why? Because this guy, every function, you know what is the definition of function? Can someone tell me what is the definition of function? Come on, someone at least take the lead and say fast.
Small block of code.
Half information. This is half information.
Block of executable code.
No, still half information. Small block of code, yes, correct.
Executed when they are called.
Very important. Until you don't add those words, no, last it will not make any sense. That block of code is only executed only and only when it is called. If you don't call, will any function be executed?
No.
No, very simple. Till now we have studied. Until we call any function, it will not be executed. You know the speciality of this guy? What is this? This is the function. But what is the speciality? Automatically gets executed. No need to call. Automatically gets executed without function call. Without call. You don't need to call this function, automatically it will get executed. Now question might be, how come automatically it gets executed? And more important question is, when exactly it gets executed? When it gets executed is basically when a new object is created. Very important point. Whenever a new object is created, this function will automatically be executed without you calling that particular function. And there is the constructor name in Python is under underscore to underscore, then you should write this word init, then you should write under underscore and then this function. This is actually the constructor name. Okay, sounds a little bit different, but these are called as special variables in Python. Special variables in Python. We will discuss about this. There is one more special variable. There are a lot many. Under underscore str under underscore. There is one more like under underscore name under underscore main under underscore. Whenever you see some things like under underscore and under underscores in Python, right? You should understand that these are special variables in Python. Very special variables which have special meanings. See here. Under underscore main under underscore. This is also a special variable in Python. What is the use of this variable? What this variable contains, we'll see when we'll be discussing a separate class about special variables. But I hope you understood that. What is a constructor? Constructor is basically a function which gets automatically called. When it gets called? When a new object is created. This much you have to understand. Constructor is basically a function, it's a method because it is going to be written inside a class, and constructors are always written inside class, okay? Don't think constructors will come normally, constructors are always written inside a class. How will you create a constructor in Python? You will write under underscore init under underscore, that's it, your constructor will be created. What is the beauty of this particular constructor? Beauty is that it automatically gets called, it breaks the rule of functions. Functions have one rule that any code will be executed only and only when it is called, but here it will break that rule, it will automatically be called. When it will be getting called? Whenever an object is created, first the constructor will be called. Always remember that, first I am talking. Any object you create of any class, the first thing what will happen is the constructor will be called automatically or invoked automatically. Object is also called instance of a class. Okay, instance basically means what? A new type or a new version. Okay, means what? I am an instance of human being class. Even you are an instance of human being class. So there is one human being class and we all are instances, just a name that is given. Instances of human beings class. Snail is an instance of human being class. Even I am a instance of human being class, something like that. Okay, object, the another definition for object is basically instance of a class, and another definition of object is a real world entity. I hope you not only theoretically know the meaning of this now, you completely conceptually understand. When I say instance of a class, what do I mean? When I say object is a real world entity, what do I mean? When I say class, what do I mean? When I say attributes and when I say methods, what those are actually? What is a constructor, when it gets called, and all this kind of stuff you are completely clear of. Okay, let's create a constructor and see. So you should create a constructor. I'll create a constructor here. How do you create a constructor in Python? Def under underscore init under underscore, then you have these words, and then you know every function in Python which is written inside a class should have a special variable which is self. Okay, so what is this self will do? You know what this self will do? Just 1 minute, I'll just write print I am a human being. Okay, just I'm saying something here. What is the use of the self? What will happen is, we know that self is actually a reference variable which is pointing towards this particular thing, right? Come on, 1 minute. You all know that self is actually just a reference variable. Self is actually just a reference variable which is pointing towards this particular thing, right? What will happen is, what is the another variable which is holding the same reference value of that particular object? Tell me. Apart from self, what is the another variable here which is holding the reference of that particular object? Fast. In this code. What is the another variable apart from self which is holding the reference value of an object? Come on, I think that you cannot
Gautam.
understand. Gautam is basically a reference variable. This is actually a reference variable. So what happens is, this object what is getting created, right, or this reference variable what is getting created, right, this is passed as a parameter to every function that is there inside this class. So this one actually will be passed as a parameter by default to every function that is basically there inside a class. Gautam, that is nothing but the reference variable, that is nothing but the object where it is referring to. So it it is actually referring to the real object. That one which is referring to the real object is passed as a parameter automatically objects reference variable. The object's reference variable is passed as a parameter. Automatically object's reference variable is passed as a parameter to every function that is there inside a class. Now if I let's say create a function here, def add, and if I am accepting two values a comma b, let's say I write return a plus b, add and return it back, then how will you call this function? Something like this. Will you agree? Will you agree this syntax? Yes or no?
Yes.
Fast. Yes. So how many parameters I am accepting here? This function, how many parameters is it accepting?
2.
2 parameters. So don't you feel that 2 values should be passed here? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. So first value will go and stored in this variable. The second value will be going and storing in this variable. Then it will do this thing. It will add and it will send back. Here also same thing. If automatically this parameter is getting passed, automatically from here automatically the parameter, if it is getting passed automatically, I am talking, you are not doing it, automatically to every function one parameter is getting passed. See here, these parameters are getting, these 2 parameters I am passing to which function add. So whatever parameters I am passing, those parameters I have to accept it by using some variable. I have to store those parameters in some variables whenever I have written a function definition. So here I have written function definition. I will, if someone is automatically passing the parameter which is holding the reference variable, then you will have to accept it in the function definition also. Similarly, the way we did it here, if someone is passing the parameter 2 and 3, you will have to accept it and store it in some variables. If someone is passing Gautam, the Gautam reference variable to every functions, then you will have to store it in some variable, and this is the variable in which you are basically storing it. You can name it whatever you want, okay, that is not an issue. It's not mandatory that you should name itself, because you can name this variable as x, y, whatever you want, that is right, there is no condition that you will have to name it like that. But we standardize it by saying that self. Why we wrote self itself? Because now it makes it easier to understand that, yeah, this is a self variable. Self variable is makes you will easily understand that, yeah, it holds the reference to particular object. Whichever object is called, that particular object it holds. So we write it as self, or else you can write it with any variable name, whichever you want. But I hope you completely got the concept of self, what the self is holding, and why we are writing there, from where this parameter. You might be saying that we are not passing parameter, then how can we accept the parameter here? We are actually passing a parameter from here, but it is happening behind the scene. It is, you are not doing it, but automatically a parameter is automatically gone to this particular functions that is available inside a class, and that you will have to catch it in some variable, and we are catching it that in some variable which is called a self. Is this completely clear or no? Is this clear or no?
Yes.
Perfect. Sounds good. Let's call this function and see, and I think we should get that we are speaking. Let me remove the self now. I am not required of this. Okay, I told you, right, that whenever an object is created, did I call this constructor? Have I called this constructor here?
No.
No. So if you accept like that, right, then I am a human being should not be printed, right, but I am a human being will be always printed first. Why? Because this is a constructor which gets automatically called, and there is no need to call, and when it gets called, when an object is created, so object got created here, that means at this particular point it first of all went and called the constructor, this program got executed, and then it came to this line, and then it saw we have to call one more function which is speak, and then it went and executed this. this particular line which is I am speaking. Is this clear?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, that sounds good. So we can create many human beings. You know, right? This class and object is a machine. If you have a blueprint, give that blueprint to that particular machine, and it will do chapa chapi work. It will just keep on creating the real objects, and it will start giving a name to every particular object. And that name that is given to every particular object, right? That is called as a reference variable, which is pointing towards that particular object. That sounds very fast, but I hope. It is completely clear for you all. You can create multiple objects then, not only Gautam. Why only Gautam? Let's create one more. Let's create snail also. Snail, human being. This is how you create one more object. Let's create one more. Let's create Anita's object. Anita might be saying you are not creating mine. I hope Anita is there. She is there.
Yes, I'm there.
Where was I? Yes, here. So again, other people also might be sad. So let's take one more. Aishwarya, we'll take Aishwarya. Okay, I will take Suchitra also. So Aishwarya, I'm sorry if I made some typo. Okay, and one more Suchitra. Suchitra is equals. Perfect. Now you see what will happen. I'll not call any function for Gautam also. I have just created objects. I have created a Gautam object. We had a human being class, right? Now we can create as much human beings as we want. So created a Gautam, created a snail, created Anita, created Aishwarya, created Suchitra. 5 objects. Now what will happen? See what happened? See here. Something interesting happened. 5 times I am a human being got created. I am a human being got printed. Why? Can someone explain me why?
Shifted 5 objects.
And my definition for constructor was that constructor will be called automatically every time when a new object is created. I had explicitly mentioned this, when a new object is created. So how many number of objects, for that much number of objects, by default constructor is going to be called. You call it or not, it is going to be called. Is that clear?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Now you can do something beautiful things also. The self is holding a reference variable pointing towards the object, right? You can set, instead of setting, this is one way to do it. You can set the properties like this here, or one way what I can do is, I can do something like this also. I created a Gautam being human being man. Now let's give some properties to Gautam, I can say dot, I can create some variables like maybe eye color, Gautam dot eye color with dot. Although there is no property that I have defined here, I can create the properties basically here using this syntax. I can create some new properties. Okay, this is also possible, or else you can define it here also. That is also possible. So I can create here also Gautam dot eye color. I want to create an attribute inside Gautam object which is eye color, and I want to set it maybe black. Maybe I want to do it same thing. Gautam dot I want to create one more Gautam dot hair color is maybe again black, something like this I want to do. I can set as much number of properties for Gautam for this particular object. Similarly, I will do just do and show for the top 2 people. Sneha is here. This object for this object. Okay, so I'll just change these colors. I can do like this. Okay, so you can define it here also, some variables if you want. That is one way. Or another way is, as soon as you create the object, you can set some parameters to it, or you can set some attributes to it. Okay, saying that I want to basically create this variable and all those kind of stuff. So let's do one thing. If the self is holding the object, okay, you told me, right, self is actually holding the object. If self is holding the object, then that basically means that self is having access to all these attributes also, because a real object has this hair color, a real object has this this is the way we have created a real object. A real object is having these properties, which is eye color and hair color. If these properties are there in this basically object, right, then self also must be having access to it. If Gautam has access to it, right, if I want to print here Gautam dot eye color, what will be printed if I print Gautam dot eye color? Gautam is basically the object and I am printing the property of that particular object. What will be printed? Come on, tell me.
Black.
Black, see here, black is getting printed. That's completely fine. That's completely okay. Nothing much shocking here. So can I say that? Can I use self also to? Can I do something like this also? Is this will work or no? My question is self dot eye color. Will this work or no? Come on. Self dot eye color. Will it work or no? If you have understood it, you must be able to answer this one. Come on, fast. Don't waste time. No means no, yes means yes.
Yes.
Yes. Who said yes? Don't be afraid, I'm not going to eat you.
Me.
Aishwarya, okay. And others, what you all feel? No answer? Will self dot eye color work or no?
Yes.
Yes. It should work, no? Because here, what is the difference between self and Gautam? Tell me. Same thing. Let's try to reduce the complexity. I'll just try to comment this all right now for small time. Okay. Let's talk only about Gautam. If I create some attributes, okay, and I have assigned some value to that, and if I am able to print Gautam dot eye color, Gautam itself is getting passed, no, itself. In the last this one diagram, I told you the Gautam, which is the reference variable itself, is exactly the copy of that is getting passed to this particular every function that is available inside the class, and which you are storing inside this self variable. So obviously there is no doubt itself. If you are able to print Gautam dot eye color, then you must be also Gautam is exactly same as self. Object is exactly same as self. So you can consider from now onwards that self itself is an object. Self itself is it is actually a reference variable which is pointing towards an object. So self will have access to everything. You can say self dot eye color here. Now I'll just remove this one. Okay, remove this one. Let's see if it is printing, it will print from here. Okay, nowhere else eye color is getting printed. Let's do it. Human being object has no. Come on, why? Gautam dot eye color. Something wrong I wrote out. Okay, sorry. So what exactly happened here is, see here, when this line will be executed, tell me. When this line will be executed, when this code will be executed, this function will be executed.
When object is created.
When object is created. When object got created, will you agree here? Here, yes. So as soon as this object got created, right, that time this line will get executed. But that time eye color is not there only. Eye color is actually set after the object is getting created. Will you agree? Here it has been set.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you got that error that human being object has no attribute eye color because it got actually displayed after the object is getting created, and as soon as this line runs, right, it will go here, it will execute this line, and then it is going to come back here, and then it is going to execute these two lines. So it did not work. That's it. Okay. So another way to do basically here is, what we can do is, whenever we are creating an object, right, we can pass some parameters. So there are types of constructors. This one is actually called as a default constructor with no parameters. Okay. So when I talk about constructors, right, there are types of constructors. Types. First one is default constructor. Default constructor basically means that it will accept no parameters as our init function is there. This is a default constructor. Okay, with no parameters. Self is a by default parameter. We are not going to consider self. Second one is called as parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. What is the use of parameterized constructor? If you want to pass some values, right, you can pass it as an argument to this particular function or to this particular constructor. Okay, you can pass it from here. Maybe I want to pass some parameters like maybe age, like maybe 21. Maybe I want to pass one more parameter while creating an object. Now see here, I am trying to pass the parameters while creating the object itself. So where these parameters will go? These parameters will actually go here, this place. Why? Because I'm passing it where I'm creating an object, and you know as soon as an object is getting created, this line is going to be called. So whatever parameters I'm going to pass, right, these parameters is going to come and reach where? In the constructor. Whenever I'm passing it here inside the class name, if I'm passing some parameters, those all parameters will come and reach in the constructor. Age 21, let's say, color I'll write eye color is basically equals to maybe black, something like this. If you want to write these words, you can write, or else you can directly pass like this parameters also. That is also not an issue. Like this also you can pass directly. Okay. And now if you pass this, you can accept those parameters here. In whichever variable you want to store, those you can store. First one I will store age variable, and next one I will store eye color variable, something like this. In two variables, I have stored whatever value is passed basically from here. That value is basically stored inside these variables now. Now if I do, okay, now I can do something like this. I can say that, hey, please do one favor for me. Whatever age is coming, right, whatever age is been passed, this one is actually called as a parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. Why it is called as parameterized constructor? Because apart from self, I am using some extra parameters, so it is called as parameterized constructor. Default constructor means what? A constructor which has no arguments, which has no parameters. That is called as default constructor. Okay. Now I can say that whatever age is coming, right, I can just, if you want, I can print and show you age here. Print and show you age, and it should print age right now for you. See here 21, and then what it is printing is this one, this line. Yes, it is printing. So what I can do is I can set this as a property for my object. Where is my object in this function? Where is my object stored? Can someone tell me? In which, in this function I am talking. Where is my object stored?
Self.
Self.
So I can do, hey, do one thing. This is my object, right? Self is my object, right? Inside self, create a variable, maybe like age, and put whatever age is coming from here, right, inside that variable. I can do something like this. Self dot age is equal to age. This, what is the meaning of this? Hey, my object is there, right? Whatever that object is basically created here. Here, Gautam, this object is getting created, right? This object will be stored inside this variable self. So do one thing, man. Like this is an object, right? So inside this self, create a variable or attribute which is called as age, and you know that whenever you have an object, all the attributes will be accessed with the help of dot operators, and create an attribute which is age, and inside that age attribute, right, store the age what is coming from here, this variable age I am talking. You can call it as age, new age also, new age, let's not avoid the confusion, new age I'll call it. So whatever new age is basically been passed as a parameter, right, when you were creating an object, when you created the object, that time this self, whatever value has been passed, right, that I want you to store inside the object itself by creating a variable age. That is what it means. Now can someone tell me, if I want to store eye color inside the object, how will you write? If I want to store eye color, whatever is coming from here, and I want to store it inside the object.
Self dot eye color.
Self dot eye color is equals to eye color. What is this eye color? This eye color is actually coming from here. Whatever this value is there, right, it will be replaced by here, and then this value will be stored inside this. Now if I do here, now let me do one thing. After this, let me print here Gautam dot eye color. Let me print here. Will this work? Gautam dot eye color will work here. Will it work or no? Gautam dot eye color will work here or no? Yes or no? First. We'll wind up within next 2 minutes. Will work or no? Yes or no? The answer is very simple. Either say no or yes. Say yes. Come on, fast. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, it will work. You know why? Because here, first this line will be executed, and when you execute this line, right, you already know it that. Just 1 minute, I'm getting on call. You already know that when this line will get executed, your object gets created. As soon as your object gets created, your pointer of the program will go to this function, which is constructor. It will execute this line. What it will do here, it will actually create a the object whatever is there, right? Inside that it will create two variables, age and eye color, and it will store the values inside those particular variables. That means now whatever object was there, that object whatever was there, right, Gautam, that has actually been given two more properties, two more attributes, which is actually age and eye color, and some values have been assigned basically inside that. Okay, so this should work. It is not working, so I think something is wrong.
Eye color.
I underscore color is there. Okay, see here, black. I had written here I underscore color as the attribute name, so it was not working. Okay, so this whatever is there, right, it will work here also. If I print here also, let's say print self dot eye color, because this variable self is also holding the same object, and if this is the first thing which got executed, right, then this is going to be executed afterwards, right? So if I print here self dot eye color, eye underscore, come on, eye underscore color, it should print the same thing. Let's remove this print now. What it will do, it will first of all create an object here. As soon as it create an object, it will go here. It will basically execute this, and inside the object it will create two variables, self.age, self.eye color, and it will store all these values. From where all these values are coming? Whenever you are creating an object, right, you can pass. See, remember this. This is actually a constructor. This is also a constructor. What is a constructor? And remember, constructor's very important property. Constructor name. Constructor name is same as class name. Okay, constructor name is same as class name. So your actual constructor, you know which one it is? This one. This is your actual constructor. This is just a special variable which will get executed. Okay, so this is the function which will get executed, but your actual constructor is this one, because constructor name will be always the class name. Constructor, what are the properties of constructor? First one, constructor is basically automatically called whenever an object is created. Constructor name is always same as class name. Whatever the class name is there, exactly same name, the constructor name also will be there. And constructor will be of two types. One is parameterized constructor and default constructor. You know the difference between those two. So whatever values you passed in this constructor, right, whatever arguments you passed inside this constructor, right, whenever you create a constructor, those will always and always go and reach to underscore init function, always. And you can catch those values inside the variables, and you can do something like this. Now this also will work. This also will work. Why? Because first this object got created. Once this object got created, this line got executed, and it created two variables, which is eye color and age, and it has set all these values inside that particular object now. And now let's say after that it will come back again here, and let's say I call this function Gautam.speak. It will come to this line now. It will come and check this line. This line Gautam.speak is called, so it will go and execute this function. Inside this function also it will get the same object which has been modified to all these properties. That means this also has access to all the properties that were created. So self.eye color will work here also. See here, black, and it is printing black. It will work here also. Will it work here? Will it work here? Self dot, maybe if I want to print age, will it work here? Inside this function? Yes or no? Fast.
Yes.
Why it should work here also? Because see here, same object is getting called, no? Same object is getting called. Whenever you call this function, right, it, same object Gautam is actually passed as a parameter here, which is stored in the variable self. Same means what? It was actually modified here. This Gautam was actually modified in the first place itself. Here itself it was been modified, and the object was actually be added. These two parameters were added inside that particular object, and that added object, whatever is there, right, itself is passed as a parameter. So obviously same object will be there. So what to understand is, same object will be there throughout, and you can access the properties of that particular object in any function. Understand this point, very important point. Same object will be there, and whichever object you have created, same object will be there, and all the properties of that particular object can be accessed in any function that you have created with the help of that self. You can create a snail human being also now. Okay, let's not pass like this. Let's do one more thing. Let's pass here her age, maybe 20, and maybe as brown. Let's do something like this. Now what will happen? It will create two times it will run. It will run first of all for this one object, and it will run next for this one object. Let's call snail.eat. Perfect. Now see, 2 times same thing will be executed. See here. First of all, I am a human being for Gautam. Sorry, here I am a human being for Gautam. Then age my 21, and I am eating is getting called. Where is that? I am eating. This one is getting called, and age 21 for my object. Okay, my object. Every object is different. Now again, after this, for snail it is doing. It went here for snail. Snail created a new object, and age is past 20 and brown color. So it went here. It assigned these all properties to snail's object. My object is different, and snail's object is different. It assigned it to snail's object. Snail's object is 20. I am eating. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes.
If you have any doubts, you can ask. Okay, or else we'll wind up. But I hope you understood lots of things today about self keyword, what exactly it is, about reference variable, about memory management, about constructors, default constructor, parameterized constructor, all those kind of stuff. Keyword, self or constructor, memory management, everything is clear. What are variables? What is an object name and what is the real object? That difference is actually clear maybe for you all. Really, who is an object and really who is a variable which is pointing towards the object, or just a name that is given to the object, and all this kind of stuff. I hope it is clear. So if it is clear, then if you have any doubts, you can just ask, or else that's it for today.
No doubts.
No.
No doubts. So you understood, I should say, or you did not understand, because doubts arises when you don't understand
Understood.
something. No doubts.
Understood.
Fine then. Today was day 17. So that's it. Thank you so much. Go and study. I think you have to exam tomorrow. So I'll not waste your time. I took a lot of time
Yes.
saying 40
Thank
minutes.
you.
Fine. Thank you so much. Bye bye.